Entire cities can vanish, leaving only whispers in the sand. This video uncovers 20 civilizations that were erased by time and nature, but never truly forgotten. We will travel across continents and through thousands of years to meet societies with incredible achievements and mysterious ends. By the finish, you will see the fragility of human ambition and the surprising endurance of memory itself. Why did a people who built perfect cities simply walk away? What secret does a single, unreadable symbol hold for our own future? What does it mean for a society to live on long after its last building has crumbled to dust? Shifting dunes slowly swallow stone monuments, grain by grain, until nothing remains but a vast and silent desert. This is the haunting face of historical erasure, a process far more complex than simple destruction. It is a silent collaboration between relentless natural forces, sudden societal collapse, and the slow, patient passage of centuries. Historians like David Christian remind us that a civilization's memory rarely vanishes completely. Instead, it fractures into fragments, a broken mosaic of pottery shards, faded inscriptions, and whispered oral traditions. Each piece is a clue in a grand, unsolved puzzle for those who dare to look. The mechanisms of this fading are as varied as the cultures themselves. A once fertile region might be struck by a prolonged drought, forcing a population to scatter. A vital trade route could shift, stranding a prosperous city and starving it of wealth and influence. Sometimes, a new political power rises, deliberately overwriting the language and monuments of those who came before. This raises a profound question. Why do some societies, like ancient Egypt, leave an indelible mark on our collective memory, while others dissolve into near oblivion, known only by a single symbol on a crumbling wall? Perhaps a civilization's true endurance is not measured by the height of its pyramids, but by the stories that outlive its stones. It is this fragile, enduring whisper of memory that guides us as we begin to meet the first of these vanished worlds. One of the most tantalizing silences in history belongs to a people who built perfect cities. Around 2,500 years before the Common Era, in what is now Pakistan and northwest India, the Indus Valley Civilization achieved a level of urban planning that would not be seen again for millennia. Its great cities, Mohenjo-Daro and Harappa, were laid out on a precise grid system with wide, straight streets. They featured the world's first known complex sanitation systems, with indoor baths and drains that connected to covered sewers running beneath the streets. Every brick from every building and city wall was baked to a uniform, standardized size. This was a society obsessed with order and public welfare, a stark contrast to the pyramid-building pharaohs of Egypt who concentrated wealth and power for the elite. Yet for all its tangible achievements, the civilization remains profoundly mysterious because we cannot hear its voice. Archaeologists like Jane McIntosh have unearthed thousands of small stone seals, carved with images of mythical beasts and a unique script. But despite numerous attempts, no one has ever deciphered it. The language of these people is completely lost to us. We can see how they lived, we can admire their engineering, but we have no idea what they believed, what they called their cities, or what stories they told their children. Their silence is a wall that archaeology has not yet been able to breach. This sophisticated society did not slowly wither. Around 1900 BC, it experienced a rapid and dramatic decline. The precise cause is still debated, but evidence points to a profound environmental shift. The life-giving rivers of the region, which sustained agriculture and trade, may have changed their courses or dried up due to climate change. This could have triggered famines and forced the population to abandon their magnificent cities and scatter into smaller villages. The great urban centers, with their flawless drainage and orderly streets, were slowly buried by silt and sand, waiting for thousands of years. The memory of the Indus Valley civilization, however, never completely died. It persisted in subtle ways, perhaps influencing later cultural and religious practices across the Indian subcontinent. Its physical disappearance did not mean its cultural extinction. The civilization challenges our very definition of what it means for a society to end. Is a civilization truly gone when its cities are empty, or does it live on in the ideas it seeded? The unanswered questions are what keep its memory alive. What secrets are held in those unread symbols on the stone seals? The answer remains buried, not just in sand, but in time itself. Across the Mediterranean, another society left behind a legacy of vibrant color and catastrophic silence. The Minoans of Crete built their world not on rigid city grids, but around sprawling, labyrinthine palaces adorned with breathtaking art. Their frescoes pulse with life, showing young athletes gracefully leaping over the backs of charging bulls and dolphins dancing in cerulean seas. For centuries, this sophisticated maritime power thrived, its influence stretching across the Aegean. The Great Palace at Knossos, with its complex multi-story layout, was so vast and intricate that it likely inspired the later Greek myth of the Minotaur's labyrinth. Yet this vibrant civilization met a sudden and violent end. The colossal volcanic eruption on the island of Thera, modern Santorini, was one of the largest in human history. It did not just bury a single city, it triggered a cataclysm. A massive tsunami would have smashed into the northern coast of Crete, while thick layers of volcanic ash choked the island's fertile farmland, crippling its agriculture. In this weakened state, the Minoans were vulnerable. Historians like Rodney Castleton point to evidence of invasion by the Mycenaeans from the Greek mainland, who took over the palaces and stamped out the unique Minoan culture. The Minoan language, recorded in a script we call Linear A, was abandoned and forgotten, its meaning lost just like the script of the Indus Valley. Here, the erasure was twofold, a brutal 1-2 punch from both nature and man. But the memory of the Minoans proved incredibly resilient. Their artistic style, full of fluid motion and natural beauty, deeply influenced later Greek art. Their possible connection to the legend of Atlantis, a sophisticated island kingdom that sank beneath the waves, ensures they live on in our collective imagination. This urges a powerful question about the resilience of human creativity. Can a civilization be truly erased when its art continues to inspire wonder thousands of years later, and its story fuels our greatest myths? The ash of Thera buried their cities, but it could not extinguish the brilliant colors of their legacy. The vibrant colors of Minoan frescoes give way to the monumental geometry of rose-red stone. Deep within the desert canyons of modern Jordan, the Nabateans carved an empire not from bricks, but from the living rock itself. Their capital, Petra, was a city of breathtaking audacity, its temples and tombs hewn directly from towering sandstone cliffs. From the 4th century before the Common Era to the 1st century of it, this was the brilliant heart of a vast commercial network. The Nabateans were the undisputed masters of the lucrative incense trade, funneling frankincense and myrrh from southern Arabia to the markets of the Mediterranean. Their wealth was not merely displayed in their architecture, it was built upon an even more vital kind of engineering. In a hyper-arid landscape, they became geniuses of water conservation. They constructed an intricate network of dams, channels, and cisterns that captured every precious drop of winter rain, allowing their city to flourish in the heart of the desert. This hydraulic mastery supported a population of thousands and made Petra an irresistible oasis for caravans. Yet this brilliance could not insulate them from the shifting tides of geopolitics. As the Roman Empire expanded its reach, it gradually absorbed Nabatean territories. The final blow came in the year 106 of the Common Era, when the Romans formally annexed the kingdom of Nabatea, transforming it into the province of Arabia Petraea. This political takeover was coupled with a devastating economic shift. Roman merchants began bypassing the traditional overland routes, sending ships directly to Arabia for incense. The lifeblood of the Nabatean economy was slowly cut off. As historian Philip Hammond details, without their trade monopoly and under the weight of Roman rule, Petra's importance dwindled. The city was gradually abandoned, its magnificent facades left silent, known only to local Bedouin tribes. For centuries, the Western world knew it only as a legend, the Lost Rose Red City. Its rediscovery by the Swiss explorer Johann Ludwig Burckhardt in 1812 ignited global fascination, leading to its status as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Today, the Nabateans are a powerful example of how a civilization can be erased from active history by forces beyond its control. Their political identity vanished, their language faded, and their economic reason for being became obsolete. But they were never truly forgotten. Their architectural wonders continue to inspire modern engineers studying their ancient water management systems. Petra itself stands as a permanent bridge between past and present, a testament to human ingenuity carved in stone, proving that even the most silent city can still speak volumes. The same relentless jungle that swallowed cities can also preserve them in a deep green slumber. For centuries, the colossal stone faces of Angkor Wat stared out from a kingdom of roots and vines, unknown to the outside world. This was the heart of the Khmer Empire, a civilization that dominated Southeast Asia from the 9th to the 15th century. Its rulers did not just build temples, they engineered a metaphysical landscape in stone, constructing immense monuments like Angkor Wat and the Bayon to reflect their Hindu-Buddhist cosmology, a map of the universe made real. The true genius of the Khmer, however, lay beneath the ground. To support a population that may have exceeded 1 million people, they built a vast and complex hydraulic system, a network of reservoirs, canals, and massive barrages or artificial lakes that captured monsoon rains to sustain intensive rice agriculture through the dry season. This system turned the region into an agricultural powerhouse, fueling the empire's expansion and allowing for the construction of its architectural wonders. Yet this very dependence on water management became its vulnerability. Research by scholars like Charles Hyam points to a period of intense environmental stress. A series of prolonged droughts in the 14th century, interspersed with devastating mega-monsoons, would have overwhelmed and silted up the delicate water network. Canals built for one climate pattern failed in another, leading to crop failure and social upheaval. This internal strain was compounded by external pressures, including the rising power of neighboring Thai kingdoms. The empire did not vanish overnight. Instead, its political and economic center gradually shifted south toward the area of modern Phnom Penh, leaving the great stone city of Angkor to be slowly reclaimed by the jungle. The empire's political power faded, but its memory never did. The spiritual and architectural legacy of the Khmer became the bedrock of Cambodian identity, its stories immortalized in the bas-reliefs covering every wall. Today, the restored temples attract millions of visitors, a testament to how physical structures can preserve a civilization's soul long after its kings and armies are dust. The story of Angkor is a powerful lesson in the delicate balance between human ambition and environmental sustainability. It forces us to ask, how resilient are the foundations of our own society when faced with a changing world? The stones of Angkor hold their silence, but their warning echoes through the centuries. Emerging from the verdant Mexican jungles, colossal stone heads stare out with an impassive silence. These monumental sculptures, carved from single blocks of basalt, are the most iconic legacy of the Olmecs, a civilization so foundational that scholars often call them the mother culture of Mesoamerica. Flourishing from around 1400 to 400 years before the Common Era, the Olmecs established the blueprint for nearly everything that would follow in the region. At their great centers like San Lorenzo and La Venta, they erected the first pyramids, developed a complex calendar, and may have created the earliest forms of writing in the Americas. They were the true pioneers, laying the cultural and religious groundwork for future powers like the Maya and the Aztecs. Yet, for all their influence, they left behind a profound mystery. We have their grand sculptures and their ceremonial plazas, but we possess very few written records that we can understand. Their story is told primarily through their art and architecture, a narrative without words. According to archaeologists like Richard Deal, the Olmec decline was likely not a single event but a gradual process. It may have been driven by internal conflicts, perhaps revolts against a ruling elite, or by significant environmental shifts that damaged their agricultural base. Their major centers were deliberately defaced and abandoned, their colossal heads toppled and buried, but here lies the most remarkable part of their story. The Olmec civilization did not so much vanish as it was absorbed. Its core innovations, its artistic styles, and its powerful religious symbols were adopted and adapted by the cultures that rose in its wake. The terrifying word jaguar, a recurring motif blending human and jaguar features, appears again and again in later mythologies. Their concept of sacred ball courts and their veneration of the jaguar as a symbol of shamanic power became deeply embedded in the Mesoamerican worldview. The Olmecs themselves faded from history, their cities reclaimed by the earth, but their ideas proved immortal. They are a stunning example of a civilization that achieved a different kind of endurance. Their political structure crumbled, their people scattered, yet their intellectual and spiritual DNA became the inheritance of an entire cultural sphere. How does an idea detach itself from its creator to live on for millennia? The silent stone heads hold the answer, not in any inscription, but in the enduring legacy they silently witnessed. High in the Ethiopian highlands, stone obelisks still pierce the sky, silent monuments to a kingdom that once commanded the seas. The Axumite Empire was a powerhouse of the ancient world, flourishing from the 1st to the 8th centuries of the Common Era. From its capital at Axum, this African civilization dominated the trade routes linking the Roman Empire and India, its wealth flowing from the port of Adulis on the Red Sea. This was no isolated kingdom, it was a cosmopolitan hub whose distinctive coinage, stamped with the faces of its kings, circulated from Alexandria to southern India. The Axumites were architectural pioneers, carving and erecting colossal stone stelae, some weighing hundreds of tons, as funerary markers for their elite. Their most profound legacy, however, was spiritual. In the 4th century, King Azana converted to Christianity, making Axum one of the very first empires to embrace the faith, anchoring it so deeply that it would become the heart of Ethiopian orthodoxy for millennia to come. Yet even this mighty realm could not withstand the converging pressures of a changing world. Historians like Stuart Munro detail a perfect storm of challenges. Centuries of intensive agriculture likely led to severe soil exhaustion, stripping the land of its fertility. A shifting climate may have brought unpredictable rains, undermining the agricultural base that supported its population. At the same time, a new geopolitical force was rising. The explosive expansion of the Islamic caliphates in the 7th and 8th centuries fundamentally altered the world's trade maps. As Muslim powers consolidated control over the Middle East and North Africa, the Christian kingdom of Axum found itself economically isolated. The bustling Red Sea trade that had been its lifeblood was rerouted, and its great port of Adulis slowly dwindled into ruin. The political power of the Axumite kings faded, their grand capital diminished, but their civilization was never truly erased. Its memory found a different vessel for survival. The spiritual traditions established under King Azana did not just persist, they thrived, evolving into the rich tapestry of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. The ancient liturgical language of Ge'ez, once spoken in the Axumite court, continues to this day as a living language of scripture and scholarship. The very obelisks that marked the tombs of forgotten rulers are now protected as UNESCO World Heritage Sites, drawing pilgrims and travelers from across the globe. The Axumite Empire offers a profound lesson on the anchors of cultural memory. When political power dissolves and economic networks collapse, what remains? For Axum, it was a faith and a language that rooted its identity so deeply that they outlasted the empire itself by over 1,000 years. The stones may have been abandoned, but the spirit they represented never was. Gold and clay tell the story of a people who thrived in one of the world's driest deserts. Along the sun-baked coast of northern Peru, the Moche Civilization transformed barren landscapes into fertile valleys between the 1st and 8th centuries of the Common Era. They were masters of hydraulic engineering, constructing intricate networks of canals that channeled water from the Andes to their fields, sustaining a society capable of erecting monumental adobe pyramids. The Huaca del Sol, or Pyramid of the Sun, was a colossal structure built from an estimated 140 million adobe bricks, a testament to the power of their rulers and the coordination of their people. But the Moche were more than just engineers, they were artists who documented their entire world in stunning detail. Their ceramic vessels are not mere pots, they are a portrait gallery of the ancient Andes. They sculpted faces showing every expression from laughter to anguish, and depicted scenes of weaving, fishing, and complex religious ceremonies with a realism that feels startlingly immediate. This vivid artistry provides a window into their lives unlike any written history, showing us a society rich with ritual and hierarchy. Yet this flourishing civilization faced a formidable and recurring enemy, the climate. Researchers like Christopher Donnan point to evidence of a series of intense climatic disruptions, likely severe El Niño events. These would have brought torrential rains and flooding, devastating their canal systems, followed by prolonged, crippling droughts that withered their crops. The very irrigation that gave them life became their vulnerability when nature turned against them. Faced with repeated agricultural collapse and social unrest, the Moche political structure fragmented. Their great ceremonial centers were abandoned, and their people gradually assimilated into new cultural groups like the Chimu. The civilization as a distinct entity faded, but its cultural DNA did not. Their artistic styles, their metallurgical techniques for working gold and copper, and their religious iconography were inherited and adapted by the cultures that followed. The Moche never truly vanished, they simply merged into the tapestry of Andean history. Their story is a powerful echo of our own modern concerns, a stark reminder of how a society's brilliant adaptations can be undone by environmental extremes it cannot control. What does their intricate pottery ultimately preserve, if not the enduring human face of resilience itself? Deep within the dusty plains of Anatolia, a city of clay tablets guarded the secrets of a forgotten superpower. The Hittite Empire, centered at its monumental capital Hattusa, was a contemporary and fierce rival of ancient Egypt, a kingdom of charioteers and diplomats whose influence stretched across the ancient Near East. Their capital was not just a political center but a vast library, its archives filled with thousands of baked clay tablets inscribed in cuneiform. These were not mere inventory lists. They were sophisticated legal codes, detailed treaties, and rich mythological texts that detailed a complex society. The Hittites were technological pioneers, masters of a new and formidable material, iron. At a time when bronze was the dominant metal, their advanced ironworking gave them a significant military and economic edge. They were also architects of early international law, famously forging a peace treaty with Egypt after the Battle of Kadesh, a document that survives to this day. Yet this powerful, organized empire met a sudden and catastrophic end around 1200 years before the Common Era. Historians like Trevor Bryce point to a convergence of disasters. A wave of mysterious invaders known only as the Sea Peoples raided coastlines and destabilized trade networks. This external threat was compounded by bitter internal strife as civil war fractured the empire from within. A severe, prolonged drought may have been the final blow, crippling agriculture and leading to famine. The perfect storm of invasion, civil conflict, and environmental crisis shattered the Hittite state. Their population dispersed, their capital was abandoned and burned, and their memory was largely erased from history for over 3,000 years. The empire was dismantled so completely that later civilizations built upon its ruins with no knowledge of the giant whose shoulders they stood upon. But the Hittites had left a key to their own resurrection. Those countless clay tablets, baked hard in the fires that destroyed Hattusa, survived intact. For centuries they lay buried, their script undeciphered. It was not until the early 20th century that scholars finally cracked the code of Hittite cuneiform, unlocking the vast archives and allowing the empire to speak for itself once more. This rediscovery was a monumental act of historical revival, pulling an entire civilization back from the brink of oblivion. The Hittite case is a profound testament to the power of the written word. It shows us that an empire can be shattered by sword and drought, its cities emptied and its people scattered, but if its records endure, its memory can be resurrected. The very technology they used to administer their empire, the humble clay tablet, became their vehicle for immortality. What other voices are waiting in the dust, silently holding stories we have not yet learned how to hear? On an island so remote it feels like a world set apart, the stone giants of Rapa Nui stand guard. These moai, with their solemn gazes fixed not on the sea but on the lands of their descendants, are the ultimate expression of a people who carved their identity in volcanic rock. Settled around 300 years of the Common Era, the Rapa Nui civilization flourished in profound isolation for more than a millennium. Their society was organized around powerful clans, and the creation of these colossal statues was a central act of cultural and spiritual life. Each moai was not merely a sculpture, it was a sacred repository of ancestral power, or mana, believed to watch over the community. The engineering feat of quarrying, transporting, and erecting these multi-ton figures across the island with only human strength and ingenuity remains one of humanity's most stunning accomplishments. Yet this very ambition may have contained the seeds of their downfall. As researchers like Jared Diamond have argued, the island's story is a stark lesson in ecological limits. The Rapa Nui people relied heavily on the island's lush palm forests, using the wood for everything from building canoes for deep-sea fishing to creating rollers and levers to move their massive statues. Over centuries, this demand led to systematic deforestation. Without trees, the soil eroded, crippling agriculture. Without large canoes, the people lost access to vital protein from dolphins and tuna. Society descended into a desperate struggle over dwindling resources, with evidence pointing to internal conflict and even cannibalism. By the time European explorers made contact in the 18th century, the population was a fraction of what it had been, and the great statue-building tradition had long since ended. But to say the Rapa Nui simply collapsed is to miss the most vital part of their story. Their memory was fiercely preserved through powerful oral traditions, chants, and genealogies passed down through generations. In the faces of the modern Rapa Nui people, their culture is experiencing a vibrant revival, reclaiming their language and ancestral practices. Their civilization did not vanish, it transformed under immense pressure. The silent moai now serve a dual purpose. They are both monuments to a lost golden age and profound stone-wrought warnings. They force us to ask a difficult question of our own global society. What happens when a culture's monumental ambitions outstrip the fragile environment that supports it? The Rapa Nui answer is written not in sand, but in the resilient spirit of a people and the enduring lessons of their isolated world. While the stone giants of Rapa Nui stood in isolation, another civilization was raising its own earthworks at the heart of a continent. Monk's Mound at Cahokia is a colossal earthen pyramid, a structure so vast it contains over 20 million cubic feet of soil, all moved by hand in woven baskets. Around the year 1050 of the Common Era, this was the center of a bustling city, the largest pre-Columbian settlement north of Mexico. Tens of thousands of people lived here, a thriving urban hub with organized neighborhoods, bustling plazas, and a complex social structure ruled by a powerful chief. Cahokia was the brilliant core of the Mississippian culture, a civilization connected by trade routes that stretched from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico, exchanging distinctive shell ornaments, finely crafted pottery, and prized chunks of copper. The city itself was a carefully engineered sacred landscape, aligned with the movements of the sun. Its central plaza was flanked by over 120 mounds, platforms for the homes of the elite, stages for public ceremonies, and burial sites for revered leaders. This was a society of immense coordination and spiritual depth, a testament to the sophistication of North America's indigenous peoples. Yet by the 14th century, this great city was largely abandoned. The vibrant capital had dwindled, its people dispersing to form smaller communities elsewhere. Archaeologists like Timothy Pocketat point to a confluence of factors for this decline. A period of cooler, wetter weather may have disrupted the vital corn agriculture that fed the massive population. Centuries of intensive logging for construction and fuel could have led to local resource exhaustion, forcing people to travel further for basic needs. This environmental pressure likely sparked social and political unrest, challenging the authority of the ruling chief and fracturing the cohesive culture that built the mounds. The people did not vanish, but the urban experiment of Cahokia came to an end. Today, as a UNESCO World Heritage Site, the mounds stand as silent, powerful monuments. Walking among them, you are not just looking at ancient hills, you are tracing the contours of a forgotten city, connecting with a legacy written not in words, but in the very shape of the land. Cahokia's story reminds us that a civilization's most enduring record is sometimes not a written text, but a transformed landscape, an enduring question mark carved from earth and ambition. South of Egypt, a rival kingdom built its own pyramids, a forest of sharp angles against the desert sky. This was the kingdom of Kush, a civilization that not only neighbored the pharaohs but once conquered them. From around 800 years before the Common Era to 350 of the Common Era, the Kushites ruled the Nile Valley from their heartland in what is now Sudan. They were a power to be reckoned with, masters of iron production whose furnaces lit the night, and creators of their own still undeciphered script, Meroitic. For a time, their kings, the Black Pharaohs, even ruled over a unified Egypt, establishing the 25th dynasty and leaving their mark on monuments from Thebes to the Delta. This was not a simple copycat culture. It was a distinct and formidable empire that interacted with the Mediterranean world as an equal, yet its power eventually waned. Historians like Laszlo Turek point to a slow environmental squeeze, as overgrazing and deforestation likely degraded the land that sustained their population. At the same time, the rising economic power of the Axumite Empire to the east began to redirect the lucrative trade routes that had been another source of Kushite wealth. The kingdom's political influence faded, its cities were gradually abandoned, and for centuries its story was relegated to a footnote in the grand narrative of Egypt. This marginalization, however, is now being dramatically reversed. Ongoing archaeological work at sites like Meroe, the later Kushite capital, continues to uncover a sophisticated society. Excavations reveal elaborate palaces, temples dedicated to both Egyptian and native Kushite gods, and evidence of a complex, literate administration. Each new discovery is an act of revival, pulling the kingdom of Kush back from the obscurity to which it was once consigned. This civilization's legacy endured not in grand political continuations, but in the cultural traditions of the Nubian people, whose languages and customs carry echoes of their ancient ancestors. The story of Kush is a powerful reminder that history is often written by the most famous voices, while other, equally compelling narratives wait just beneath the sand for their turn to speak. High on the Altiplano, the wind-swept plains of Bolivia, a single stone gateway stands as a sentinel to a forgotten empire. The Tiwanaku Civilization, flourishing from around 300 to 1,000 years of the Common Era, transformed this harsh, high-altitude landscape into the heart of a powerful state. Their capital city was a marvel of monumental architecture and urban planning, centered around a massive sunken court and pyramids like the Akapana, which was not just a temple but a sophisticated hydrological structure, channeling water in a symbolic reenactment of the mountain life force. The most iconic relic, the Gateway of the Sun, is a single block of andesite intricately carved with a central figure often identified as a solar deity, surrounded by rows of winged attendants. This portal was more than art, it was a cosmological map, a stone embodiment of their worldview. The true genius of the Tiwanaku, however, lay not just in their stonework, but in their mastery of the land itself. To survive at an altitude of over 12,000 feet, they engineered a revolutionary agricultural system. They built vast networks of raised fields known as suka-kolas, which were elevated planting platforms surrounded by canals. This ingenious design protected crops from frost, recycled nutrients through the aquatic sludge, and created a microclimate that boosted yields dramatically. This system turned the challenging terrain of Lake Titicaca's shores into a breadbasket, supporting a dense population and fueling their expansion. Their influence stretched across the southern Andes, not through conquest alone, but through a powerful blend of religious ideology and far-reaching trade networks that distributed their distinctive pottery and textiles. Yet, around the year 1000, this sophisticated society began to falter. As scholar Alan Carlotta suggests, the empire was likely brought down by a profound and prolonged drought. A climatic shift lasting for decades would have caused Lake Titicaca to recede, devastating the raised field systems that were the foundation of their wealth and power. Without this agricultural surplus, the political and religious hierarchy lost its authority. The population dispersed from the great capital, migrating to more hospitable valleys and forming smaller communities. The grand city was gradually abandoned to the elements, but the Tiwanaku did not simply disappear. Their most vital innovations were preserved and adopted. The Inca, who rose to power centuries later, would look upon the ruins of Tiwanaku as a sacred site, the place of creation, and they integrated Tiwanaku's architectural styles and agricultural knowledge into their own imperial system. More profoundly, the spiritual symbols carved on the gateway of the sun and the underlying reverence for the earth, the mountains, and the sun became deeply woven into the fabric of Andean indigenous cultures, where they endure to this day. The stones of Tiwanaku may have been abandoned, but the world they represented was never forgotten. This raises a poignant question about the legacy we leave behind. When the political structures of a civilization crumble, what is its most resilient export? For Tiwanaku, the answer was not just a farming technique, but a way of seeing the universe, a cosmology that proved far more durable than any king or capital. The vibrant life of a people is often best preserved in their houses of the dead. Across the sun-drenched hills of Tuscany, the Etruscans built entire cities for their deceased, underground tombs painted with scenes of banquets, dancers, and athletic games. These were not somber chambers of mourning but celebrations of a rich, earthly existence, a window into a society that flourished in central Italy for 500 years. While their Roman successors would become famous for austere marble and military discipline, the Etruscan world was one of color, sensuality, and a deep reverence for the pleasures of life. They were master metalworkers, their bronze sculptures admired throughout the Mediterranean, and they laid out their cities with a precision of paved streets and drainage systems that the early Romans would later emulate. Yet for all their sophistication, their voice remains frustratingly distant. The Etruscan language, unrelated to any of its Indo-European neighbors, survives in over 13,000 inscriptions, but we can only understand a fraction of it. We know the names of their gods, like the powerful Tinia, and we can read simple funerary dedications, but their literature, their history, their own account of themselves is almost entirely lost. This linguistic curtain means we see them primarily through Roman eyes, who portrayed them as decadent and luxury-loving, a biased view that has colored their memory for millennia. How did such a vibrant and influential culture simply fade from the historical stage? The answer lies not in a sudden collapse, but in a slow, deliberate absorption. As the Roman Republic grew in military and political strength, it began a relentless push north into Etruscan territory. City by city, they were defeated in a series of wars. But the true erasure was more subtle than conquest alone. The Romans, pragmatic as ever, recognized the advanced culture of the people they had subdued. They actively adopted Etruscan innovations, integrating them so thoroughly that they became fundamental pillars of Roman identity. The iconic symbols of Roman power, the fasces, a bundle of rods with an axe, was an Etruscan invention. The complex art of divination, of reading the will of the gods in the flight of birds or the entrails of sacrificed animals, was a science learned from Etruscan priests. Even the very layout of the great temple of Jupiter on Rome's Capitoline Hill followed an Etruscan architectural blueprint. As scholar Sybil Haynes explains, this cultural integration was a double-edged sword. Etruscan aristocrats were granted Roman citizenship, their sons learned Latin, and over generations, the unique Etruscan identity was dissolved into the growing Roman mass. Their language fell out of use, their distinct political structures vanished, and their history was rewritten by their conquerors. Yet this process of assimilation, while erasing their political existence, ensured their cultural immortality. The Etruscans did not vanish, they simply became part of the bedrock upon which Rome, and subsequently all of Western civilization, was built. Their story challenges our very definition of a civilization's end. Can a people truly be called lost when their spirit is woven into the fabric of the world that followed? The silent, painted tombs of Tuscany hold the answer, not in the words we cannot read, but in the enduring legacy they gifted to an empire. Beneath the blistering sands of the Libyan Sahara, a hidden network of tunnels once turned certain death into vibrant life. The Garamontes were not mere desert nomads, they were kings of an impossible realm, building a sophisticated kingdom in one of the most unforgiving environments on Earth from around 500 years before the Common Era to 700 after it. Their secret was a mastery of water invisible from the surface. They constructed thousands of miles of underground irrigation channels known as fagaras, tunneling deep into the bedrock to tap fossil water aquifers that had been sealed away for millennia. These tunnels, sloping gently to guide the water by gravity alone, fed lush oases where the Garamontes cultivated dates, grapes, and grains, sustaining a population of tens of thousands. This was the engine of a civilization that became a critical hub for trans-Saharan trade, dealing in gold, ivory, and slaves brought from Central Africa and exchanging them for goods from the Roman world to their north. They lived in multi-story mud brick houses, their society ruled by a king, and their warriors rode in chariots across the dunes. For over 1,000 years, they thrived where no one else could. Yet their very survival contained the seeds of their demise. The fossil water they relied upon was not a renewable resource. It was a vast but finite bank account with no incoming deposits. Archaeologists like David Mattingly point to centuries of intensive agriculture that slowly but surely drained this ancient reserve. As the water table dropped, maintaining the fagaras became an increasingly desperate and labor-intensive battle. This human-caused strain was compounded by a broader climatic shift, a gradual drying of the Sahara that turned marginal lands completely barren. The combination was fatal. Their brilliant hydraulic system began to fail, oasis by oasis. The population was forced to disperse, their cities were abandoned, and their kingdom faded into the sand, remembered only in fragmentary mentions by Roman historians who saw them as fierce, distant barbarians. For centuries, the Garamontes were a mere footnote, a mysterious desert people, but modern archaeology is now pulling them back into the light. Satellite imagery and ground surveys have revealed the true scale of their settlements and their incredible fagara networks, proving this was a major, centralized state. Their story is a powerful, double-edged lesson from the past. It is a stark warning about the consequences of overtaxing an environment, even with the most brilliant technology. Yet it is also a profound inspiration. The same fagara technology they perfected is being studied today as a model for sustainable water management in arid regions, an ancient answer to the modern crisis of desertification. The Garamontes did not simply vanish, they left a blueprint for survival, a message from the past telling us that the limits of a civilization are not written in the stars, but in the water beneath our feet. While the Garamontes mastered water in the desert, another civilization perfected the art of memory in gold and stone. In the southeastern Korean peninsula, the Silla kingdom forged a cultural legacy so brilliant it continues to define a nation. From 57 years before the Common Era to 935 of the Common Era, Silla evolved from a powerful confederacy to the force that unified the Korean peninsula for the first time. Its capital at Jeongju was so lavishly adorned with temples, palaces, and royal tombs that it earned the name, the Museum Without Walls. The most stunning artifacts from this era are the exquisite gold crowns, intricate webs of jade and gold that seem to capture light itself, symbolizing a society where spiritual authority and royal power were inextricably linked. This was a kingdom deeply devoted to Buddhism, which it elevated into a state religion, sponsoring the creation of sublime art and architecture like the serene Bulguksa Temple and the nearby Seokgyoram Grotto, a man-made cave shrine housing a majestic granite Buddha. Silla's strength was not only cultural but also martial, upheld by a unique class of warrior elites known as the Hwarang. These were not merely soldiers, they were young aristocrats trained in music, poetry, and spiritual discipline, embodying a code of chivalry and loyalty that served as the moral backbone of the state. Yet, as historian Kai Baek Lee documents, no golden age lasts forever. After centuries of dominance, the kingdom was weakened by internal power struggles among the noble classes and rising external pressures from revived regional powers. The Silla court grew increasingly corrupt and detached from its people, losing the mandate that had once held the kingdom together. In 935, the last Silla monarch formally surrendered to the founder of the new Goryeo dynasty, not in a violent conquest, but in a peaceful transfer of power that absorbed the old kingdom into the new. The Silla state dissolved, but its civilization was far from erased. Its most profound achievements, its artistic styles, its Buddhist traditions, and its model of centralized governance were seamlessly woven into the fabric of the Goryeo dynasty and all subsequent Korean states. The physical preservation of sites like Bulguksa Temple allows every visitor to walk through a living portal into the Silla world. This continuous, unbroken engagement with their heritage demonstrates a powerful truth. A civilization's political existence can end, but its cultural soul can achieve a different kind of immortality, sustained by the national memory of the people it helped to create. The gold crowns are not just relics in a glass case, they are a promise that beauty and identity can outlast any dynasty. Far from the Korean peninsula, in the heart of southern Africa, a city of stone rose without a single drop of mortar. The Kingdom of Zimbabwe, flourishing from the 11th to the 15th centuries, built its capital, Great Zimbabwe, into a breathtaking complex of granite walls and conical towers. These were not crude structures, but masterpieces of dry stone walling, with curves and enclosures so precisely fitted that they have endured for nearly 1,000 years. This was the heart of a vast commercial network, a powerful state that controlled the flow of gold from the interior to the bustling Swahili city-states on the coast. Its wealth was legendary, its influence stretching across the Indian Ocean trade routes. Yet by the 15th century, this great city was largely abandoned. As historian Innocent Piqueret suggests, the kingdom likely fell to a combination of pressures, including environmental exhaustion from centuries of supporting a large population and a crucial shift in trade routes that bypassed its central position. The people moved on, establishing new centers of power, but the magnificent stone ruins remained, a silent testament to a glorious past. For European colonizers who encountered the ruins centuries later, their scale and sophistication were an inconvenient truth. They refused to believe that indigenous Africans could have built such a wonder, spinning fantastical theories about Phoenician traders or the Queen of Sheba. This deliberate misappropriation was an attempt to erase the kingdom not just from the landscape, but from history itself, severing a people from their own magnificent heritage. But the stones of Great Zimbabwe held a different story. Archaeological excavations confirmed its purely African origins, uncovering artifacts like Chinese porcelain and Arabian glass alongside local pottery, proof of its deep integration into medieval global trade. Today, the ruins are a source of immense national pride, their name given to the modern country, and their architectural motifs featured on the national flag. The restoration of Great Zimbabwe's true history is a powerful act of reclamation, proving that while political change and prejudiced narratives can obscure a civilization, material evidence is a stubborn and undeniable witness. The silent walls now speak loudly, not just of a lost kingdom's power, but of the enduring right of a people to their own past. Those stark white marble figurines possess a silence that echoes across millennia. On the Cycladic islands of the Aegean, a culture flourished from 3,200 to 2,000 years before the Common Era, its people navigating the deep blue waters between continents. They were master mariners and traders, their networks connecting the Greek mainland with the rising power of Minoan Crete. While they left no deciphered written records to tell us their stories, they left behind an art form of breathtaking purity. Their signature sculptures, slender female figures with folded arms and featureless faces aside from a prominent nose, are studies in elegant geometry. These were not portraits but powerful symbols, perhaps of fertility or ancestral spirits, their abstract forms speaking a universal language of shape and line. The society that produced them remains shrouded in mystery, its political structure and daily life elusive, known primarily from burial sites and scattered settlements. According to scholars like Colin Renfrew, the Cycladic culture did not meet a violent end. Instead, it was gradually enveloped by the expanding influence of its magnificent Minoan neighbor. As Minoan trade and cultural prestige grew, the Cycladic islands were drawn into its orbit. This was not a conquest, but a slow, deep cultural absorption. Minoan artistic motifs, architectural styles, and religious practices began to blend with native Cycladic traditions, creating a unique hybrid identity. Over centuries, the distinct character of the earlier Cycladic culture faded into this new synthesis, its political independence lost to the tides of influence. Yet, in a remarkable twist, their most famous creation refused to be forgotten. Those minimalist marble figurines, buried for thousands of years, were rediscovered in the modern era. Their stark, abstract beauty resonated powerfully with 20th-century artists like Constantin Brancusi and Henry Moore, who saw in them a kindred spirit of modernism. The very art that could not preserve its creators' names ended up influencing the course of contemporary sculpture. This presents a fascinating paradox of cultural survival. A civilization can lose its political identity, its language, and even its name, only to have its aesthetic sense leap across time to inspire new generations. The Cycladic culture teaches us that legacy is not a single thread, but a tapestry woven from many strands. While the tapestry itself may fray, the most vibrant colors can be rewoven into the art of the future, achieving a form of immortality that no king or city could ever secure. While the Aztecs built their empire on an island in a lake, their greatest rivals forged a kingdom of metal and mountains. The Tarascan Empire stood as a defiant power in western Mexico from the 14th to the 16th centuries, a contemporary and formidable adversary to the Aztec Triple Alliance. In the region we now call Michoacan, the Tarascans, who called themselves the Purepecha, established a heavily fortified state with a complex social hierarchy and a capital at Tizintzintzin, meaning the place of the hummingbirds. Their most distinctive technological advantage was their advanced metallurgy. While the Aztecs prized gold and jade, the Tarascans mastered copper, producing not only beautiful ornaments but also practical tools and formidable weapons, including the macuahuitl, a wooden sword edged with razor-sharp obsidian blades. This technological prowess was matched by their military strategy. They constructed a network of fortifications along their eastern frontier, a clear line of defense that successfully repelled repeated, large-scale Aztec invasions. This was not a minor kingdom, it was a parallel empire that controlled a vast territory and developed entirely independently of its more famous neighbors. The Spanish chronicles, written after contact, provide a vivid, though filtered, account of this sophisticated society, detailing its organized craft guilds, its centralized government under a ruler known as the Kazansai, and its unique religious practices that venerated the Kurakauri, a solar fire god. The empire's end was as abrupt as it was total. The arrival of Spanish conquistadors in the 1520s, led by Nuño de Guzman, brought a wave of violence, political dismantling, and most devastatingly, old-world diseases like smallpox to which the population had no immunity. As historian Helen Pearlstein Pollard explains, this colonial shock shattered the imperial structure completely. The political entity of the Tarascan Empire was dissolved, its people subjugated. Yet, in a powerful testament to cultural resilience, the Purépecha people themselves never vanished. Their language, unrelated to the Nahuatl of the Aztecs, survived and is still spoken by hundreds of thousands today. Indigenous communities throughout Michoacán have preserved ancestral traditions in their crafts, festivals, and communal governance. The empire fell to the sword and plague, but its cultural heart continued to beat. The story of the Tarascans corrects a historical imbalance, reminding us that Mesoamerica was never a single story waiting for the Aztecs or the Spanish, but a vibrant tapestry of competing and coexisting states. Their legacy is a dual one, a stark lesson in the fragility of political structures in the face of colonial forces, and a profound example of how the deepest layers of identity, held in language and daily life, can endure long after the empires have turned to dust. A landscape of 1,000 spires rises from the plains, a forest of brick and devotion that marks the heart of ancient Burma. The kingdom of Pagan unified a fractured region for over 4 centuries, from the 9th to the 13th, forging a cultural identity that would define the nation of Myanmar for a millennium. Its rulers were not merely kings, they were patrons of faith on a staggering scale, commissioning the construction of over 10,000 temples, monasteries, and stupas across the capital city of Bagan. This was not simple architectural vanity, it was a profound act of religious merit, a society pouring its collective wealth and artistic spirit into the promotion of Theravada Buddhism. Each structure, from the colossal Ananda temple with its gleaming gold spire to the humble neighborhood stupa, was a permanent prayer set in brick, creating a sacred landscape of unparalleled density. The kingdom's power, however, could not withstand the converging pressures of the 13th century. As historian Michael Ong Thwin outlines, the immense resource drain from constant temple building may have weakened the economic foundations of the state, straining the royal treasury and the labor force. This internal vulnerability was met with an external shock, the relentless expansion of the Mongol Empire under Kublai Khan, which demanded submission and tribute. The kingdom fragmented politically, its central authority dissolving, and the great capital of Bagan was gradually abandoned as the political center shifted. Yet the story of Pagan is one where political collapse does not equal cultural death. While the kingdom fell, the very source of its identity became its vehicle for immortality. The thousands of temples were not forgotten or left to ruin. They have remained for centuries active sites of pilgrimage and worship. Monks still chant in the shadow of ancient walls, and families still gather to leave offerings at altars worn smooth by 800 years of devotion. This continuous, unbroken use has created a living bridge between the medieval kingdom and the modern nation. The stones of Pagan were never truly abandoned. They were simply transferred from the hands of kings into the care of the faithful. In an age where we often measure a civilization's success by its political longevity or military might, Pagan offers a different metric. it asks us to consider what truly anchors a culture in time. Is it the strength of its armies or the depth of its spiritual convictions, made tangible in art and architecture? The silent, soaring temples of Bagan suggest that the most permanent legacy a society can build is not a fortress but a sanctuary. Geometric earthworks of astonishing scale once rose from the river valleys of North America. Between 200 years before the Common Era and 500 years after it, the Hopewell Tradition created a vast cultural network that connected communities from the Great Lakes to the Gulf of Mexico. This was not a single, centralized empire, but a brilliant collaborative phenomenon, a shared set of spiritual practices and artistic styles that linked diverse peoples across the continent. They expressed their shared beliefs through the construction of enormous earthworks, precise geometric enclosures, and burial mounds that formed ceremonial landscapes of profound complexity. The Great Circle earthworks in Newark, Ohio, for instance, is a perfect circle encompassing nearly 30 acres, with its central earthwork aligned to frame the moon at a key point in its 18.6-year cycle. This was a society of astronomers and engineers who moved millions of cubic feet of earth by hand to create structures that charted the heavens. Their influence stretched far and wide, facilitated by an extensive trade network that brought obsidian from Wyoming, copper from the Great Lakes, mica from the Appalachians, and shells from the Gulf Coast. These exotic materials were crafted into intricate artworks, elaborate headdresses, and ceremonial objects that were then buried with their honored dead, suggesting a society that valued spiritual connection and artistic expression over the accumulation of personal wealth. There were no grand palaces or standing armies, only these immense communal projects that required generations of coordinated effort. So why did this vibrant tradition fade? Archaeologists like Bradley Lepper point to a slow transformation rather than a sudden collapse. A gradual shift to a cooler, wetter climate may have disrupted their agricultural patterns and the social cycles that revolved around large, seasonal gatherings. At the same time, the development of the bow and arrow and a growing dependence on corn agriculture may have encouraged a more settled, localized way of life, diminishing the need for the far-flung trade and large-scale collaboration that defined the Hopewell era. The great ceremonial centers were gradually abandoned, but the people and their descendants did not vanish. The knowledge, the artistic traditions, and the spiritual concepts cultivated during this period were carried forward, deeply influencing the later Mississippian cultures and the indigenous societies of the eastern woodlands. The preservation of sites like the Newark earthworks offers a direct, tangible link to this collaborative past, a landscape that still holds their sophisticated understanding of geometry and the cosmos. The Hopewell tradition challenges our most basic assumptions about what makes a civilization. It proves that a society does not need pyramids, emperors, or a written language to achieve greatness, to coordinate across vast distances, or to encode a complex worldview into the very shape of the earth. Their memory does not reside in a list of kings or a conquered city, but in the enduring power of a shared idea, a collective ambition written not on parchment, but on the land itself.